you're feeling it. I got you feeling this heat rise. Have you ever stayed up to the sunshine? Came through fourth quarter in the crunch time. Need to go flee on the run like just one time. Have a fun time. Monsters, tell me, do you believe in those monsters? I'm talking dreams so big that they'll haunt you, or they'll calm you. That's how you know if you gotta go and get to win and not conquer. I had to go out and get it without a sponsor. Kept it real, never crooked, yeah, that's honor. Now I can go out and get it how I want to. Hashtag bless, I choose.
What is up, Rumble? What is up, YouTube? Sorry, I had the mute button on there. Welcome back to the Ryan Matta Show. Thank you so much for joining us on this beautiful Thursday evening. It is Thursday, March 28th at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and we are coming at you live from the slums of Detroit City, and we are going to have a jam-packed show for you today. We got a special interview with a gentleman named Thomas Fahrer, and Thomas has built or put together a project called HeyaPollo. It's a Bitcoin ETF tracker. I'm very... I guess green when it comes to Bitcoin ETFs. I don't know a ton about it, but down in the description are links to both of his channels, and you guys can swing down there and please give this gentleman a follow. He's going to break down these projects. He's going to talk about himself. We're going to dive deep into Bitcoin. We're going to talk about shitcoins. We're going to talk a lot today on the show today. So smash that like button for us. I won't overtalk it. Thomas, welcome to the show, my friend. How are you?
Yeah, thanks, Ryan. Happy to be here.
Man, it's an honor to have you. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself, man? Where are you from? When did you get into Bitcoin? Let's kind of start with where you're from. We'll kind of talk about how you got into Bitcoin and crypto.
Yeah, sure. So I'm an Australian. Been in sort of Bitcoin. Been working in the industry for a couple of years now. We launched Apollo in 2022, but I've been sort of personally invested in Bitcoin a fair bit longer than that. Actually, originally started looking at Bitcoin, just sort of studying it back when I was at university, did my thesis on Bitcoin, kind of just like the really nerdy math stats side of it in 2014. But, I didn't necessarily take it. I didn't at that point in time have this view of it that it was going to be this sort of a future global world reserve currency. Wish I did though, but certainly I've been following it for a very long time, and once I sort of tracked it for a number of years, started to go, wow, yeah, this is really this is the big thing. This is the big thing that I want to devote my sort of life's energy and time towards. Became sort of all-consuming for me, which I think it does for a lot of people when they put enough focus on it, go down the rabbit hole, so to speak.
So tell me about that. In 2014, you said you wrote your thesis on it, and I like the accent, man. You're from Australia. We had when I first kicked this show back off in 2020. I did it later at night. It was like an 11 o'clock show, so it was kind of like prime time for you guys. And half of my show used to be people from Australia, so huge fan of what you guys over in Australia, man. So tell us a little bit about this this thesis on Bitcoin.
Yeah, well, look, at the time, so I was at university, and I ended up going into sort of more TradFi investment world, but I was kind of doing I was looking at ways you could hedge Bitcoin, and I was looking at sort of dynamic hedging ratios with Litecoin at the time, because that was sort of the only thing that had a kind of correlation. There wasn't really these kind of, like, nowadays, if you were going to do the same thing, you would probably look at Ethereum, because that's kind of maybe the closest. But at the time, it was Litecoin. And then I was honestly just looking at kind of there's a thing in statistics, was looking at the tail risk, like how much could Bitcoin move in one day? And could you model that out? Could you kind of figure that out? Like, what was the value at risk if you were a merchant holding it? because that was also sort of a predominant narrative at the time, and Bitcoin has kind of moved on from that narrative. Now people sort of think about it more as a store of value, although there might be some other stuff coming along the path now, sort of 10 years later with kind of L2s and stuff. But at the time in 2014, the big dominant narrative was if Bitcoin was going to be this kind of global future payments network, it was going to come on the back of sort of merchant adoption. So basically, would I be able to pay for my groceries with Bitcoin or this sort of thing? And so I was kind of studying like, hey, if you were sort of a retailer accepting Bitcoin, what would be the benefits? Okay, maybe you reduce some you don't face these like credit card fees and these chargeback issues. But on the other hand, how much do I have at risk if I'm holding Bitcoin? Obviously, you have a lot to gain, but how much do you have at risk? So that was the kind of thing I was studying at the time. And then after that, I sort of moved into kind of a traditional finance world, working in investments, big. Sorry, go on.
No, on that thesis. So can you tell me before you keep going, what was your overall ending of your thesis of the paper that you wrote?
Well, at the time, I thought I was honestly a little bit. I was pretty skeptical of Bitcoin as a whole. I basically was open to the idea, but it was kind of dependent upon merchant adoption. That was sort of my fundamental thesis, which is kind of I can look back and honestly laugh about it now, because the truth is that Bitcoin has been spectacularly successful and there was no merchant adoption essentially. So I look back on the conclusion of my paper and I say it's wrong. But
hey, 2014. I mean, hell, that was Bitcoin was so new back then. We didn't have the sailors or anything, so I don't think anybody blames you.
Yeah, and I think that we had to go through the kind of in 16 and 17 there was really a split in the community about what kind of fundamentally Bitcoin was. Was it this kind of new payment network? Like basically, we had to figure out Bitcoin isn't like a better version of PayPal. Bitcoin is actually its own fundamental thing in itself. And that's like a very different thing that it kind of just took time for people to really understand that. And I didn't properly understand that at the sort of when I first looked at it either. And so that was kind of probably when it started to the kind of people started to figure out, no, the Bitcoin itself is a fundamental thing. It's not kind of a new, calling it a new payment network just sort of misses the mark. It might be a new payment network, but it's something much more fundamental than that. Because it's the thing itself, which is what is able to hold value. It's kind of an alternative. It's an alternative asset, not just a way to send value, but it's actually a way to store value. And I think that's kind of like fundamentally a different point of view. And I didn't necessarily grasp that at the time. But always found it really interesting. I was still I was attracted to it because, in part, like I've kind of had these sort of libertarian values. I really I was really excited about Ron Paul back in like 2012 or whatever, and kind of believed that. Well, the global financial crisis in 2008 was kind of a big sort of formative point. I was particularly young, but it was a big thing that was happening in our lives, and I paid a lot of attention to that. And when we had all these bank bailouts, that was obviously a big kind of glass shattering moment in terms of like our system as a whole. And for that reason, I never kind of lost interest in Bitcoin, even when I wasn't I wasn't necessarily convinced that it was going to be this big thing, but I still stayed like interested and focused on it. And then over time, over the years, my sort of interest grew and grew. And as I sort of gained more confidence that it couldn't be replicated or it couldn't be sort of taken down by a government, and these kind of things that everybody needs to kind of figure out when they kind of want to actually grow confidence in Bitcoin itself. So it does take, I think for everybody really, it takes a long time to study it properly, to understand it, and get confidence in it.
It really does.
I would just say, like, in general, like I always think it's like I talk to a lot of people about it, but I don't. It's weird if you kind of hear about Bitcoin and then your immediate reaction is like really positive on it. It's like, oh, you probably didn't. You need to. Everybody needs to go. Like, the first step is to be skeptical of it and then do like a lot of research. Because if your response is, oh, of course, then you probably don't understand it well, and then you probably kind of get swept up when the next person comes along and says, well, actually, I've got new Bitcoin that's better than Bitcoin. And then you go, oh, okay, well, actually, I thought I liked this Bitcoin, but actually this
this
whatever is yeah, exactly. This cum rocket is really exciting. So yeah, that's been my experience anyway.
So you hit on a few things there that I want to kind of dive into a little bit. Your outlook on what you thought Bitcoin was in 2014, 2015, I assume was probably even different than 16, 17. And then now here we are in 2024. And I think we all have this perspective of what we actually think Bitcoin is. Do you think 5 years from now, is this thing like Michael Saylor says, it's ever evolving, getting stronger, getting harder, getting faster, getting smarter? Do you think this is going to evolve to something that we're not even expecting it to? Or do you think that we are kind of on that track of where it's kind of dialed into, it's a commodity, it's a property, it's the only digital property you're going to ever own in your life? What's your thoughts on that?
I do. Yeah, the narrative is consistently changing, and it needs to change at a moment in time. Like, I do think we're at a point now at this mainstream adoption level where this kind of seeing Bitcoin as it's like digital property, it's like digital real estate. I think that's fantastic for the moment. And that's because it's going to enable all these people that are kind of politically opposed to Bitcoin, or they don't want a new currency system, right? They don't want to overthrow the US dollar. They don't want any of that. But they do like the idea of it's just digital property. And that's a lot less threatening, which is what's enabling kind of people in Wall Street, people like Larry Fink with BlackRock to come in and go, yeah, like, Bitcoin is not a threat. Bitcoin is fine. Bitcoin is great, actually. It's just 21 million units of property that it's fundamentally scarce, which means it's going to go up over time. But it's kind of a non-threat. And that enables a whole lot of capital to flood into this kind of Bitcoin is digital gold, digital property narrative. Where do I see this going eventually? It's hard for me to see it as anything other than money. Like, it is fundamentally going to be used as money, because when everybody owns it and it's actually easy to send it and receive it, why wouldn't it be used as money? And why wouldn't you want to use it as money? I'm very confident about that. But that the Bitcoin as money thesis is still like, that might be 5-10 years away. We don't need to convince anybody about Bitcoin as a future currency. We can just say, Bitcoin is digital property. Bitcoin is digital gold. Just look at it as it's not. But it's a good enough narrative to get the next 100 billion from Wall Street flowing into Bitcoin to kind of increase the liquidity of the network, make it that much stronger, and the best way to kind of orange pill people about Bitcoin is actually have them owning Bitcoin. Nothing makes people more interested in learning and understanding and sort of going down the rabbit hole than first at least having some kind of financial exposure to it. So I definitely see that narrative shifting over time. And also just because the reality is that Bitcoin is an open source software. Like it's actually literally evolving. People are for one, because it can build on higher layers on top of it. So you don't even have to necessarily change the fundamental code of Bitcoin to be able to be coding up like different ways of locking it in channels and then being able to transfer each other at the speed of light via lightning, or these other kind of different layer twos that are happening. So you don't even have to change the code of Bitcoin itself to be coding things on higher layers to be able to making it more accessible. But then even the base layer of Bitcoin is fundamentally changing. I mean, at least it has in recent years. Certainly we've had obviously these kind of inscriptions and ordinals coming into really on Bitcoin really for the first time over the last year, and that kind of positions it as kind of a platform network for all these additional tokens and things that can be added on Bitcoin. And I think what's interesting about Bitcoin is that when you talk to 100 people, you kind of get 100 different. You kind of get 100 different views about what Bitcoin is. Like some people have this view of Bitcoin as kind of, it's an information network. That's what it is. It's communication. It's another form of communicating with each other, which is, I mean, it's all true. It's just depending on what your kind of fundamental bias is about what you care about. That kind of changes your framing on it. So I definitely think there's going to be new narratives coming in. There always are. And there's not even one narrative for right now, but I do think the predominant narrative that the narrative that matters for us from the perspective of, this bull run, for example, it doesn't matter for how the network operates, but the narrative for this bull run is Bitcoin is digital property. You can invest via these ETFs. These people are going to go talk to their financial advisor, and they're going to go click, sell my GLD ETF, and I'm going to buy the BlackRock ETF. And I want to have 3% of my portfolio in it, not because I really understand Bitcoin, but because I just think that the potential price upside is good. And that's kind of what's going to onboard the next 100 billion in capital coming from Wall Street over the next year, right? It's not to say that it's like the true narrative, but this is what the people believe that they're going to be investing in. That's what I think. That's what I'm seeing anyway.
I know I couldn't agree with you more. So you've built this. We keep going back to these. We keep going back to these ETFs, and I know it's kind of like the big buzzword right now. You're building. Can you explain it a little bit about what HeyaPollo is, or what Apollo is? Are you calling it HeyaPollo or just Apollo?
Yeah, it's Apollo. The website is HeyaPollo.com, but it's the sort of the company is Apollo, and it's really it's a platform for discovery of Bitcoin resources, products, services, and resources and services to kind of understand, communicate Bitcoin, and also just kind of find the things that you would need that's useful when you kind of using Bitcoin. So how do I hold Bitcoin? How do I buy Bitcoin? If I want to delve into sort of the sending of it, like using like Lightning wallets and this kind of thing for different more technical things you can do as well. But one of the big things we're focusing on, because it's really interesting, is these kind of tracking these Bitcoin ETFs. And we do that because it's such a...
Are you able to see my screen right now? Like are you able to see what the audience is? Okay, cool. I wanted to put you on the screen here, and that way you can kind of like tell me where to go and walk me through it. And I just wanted to make sure you were able to see that before, but go ahead, keep going.
Yeah, for sure. So right now you're on our sort of ETF tracker page, and this is a table, and we've got some charts underneath here, which are just tracking all of the spot Bitcoin ETFs and the assets held. Particularly, we try and have a particular focus about like how many Bitcoin they're holding, but obviously you can measure it in dollars as well. And the big story since these ETFs launches has been, you started with one sort of giant in Grayscale who had 619,000 Bitcoin when they converted from their they converted from a trust into a spot Bitcoin ETF. And all the other ETFs started with nothing, right? So you had 619,000 in Grayscale, and you had nothing in everything else. And what's been happening over the past 2 months is Grayscale is losing their Bitcoin. People are selling Grayscale. It's flowing into these other ETFs. And in addition, we're seeing a lot of fresh new capital coming in and buying up these ETFs. So Grayscale is down to 335,000 Bitcoin. So they've lost almost half their Bitcoin. But you've already got BlackRock with 250,000, or Fidelity with 140,000. And on net, you could measure this in a number of different ways, but maybe I think what's most important for people is actually going, how many new Bitcoin does these ETFs hold? Because that kind of gives you an idea. Like, it's not that interesting going, ETFs going, sort of Bitcoin going from Grayscale to BlackRock or whatever. What's more interesting is, somebody is on their kind of trading account and they're buying these ETFs. How many new Bitcoin are going in? And you can kind of scroll down and you'll see a chart that shows that we're at about 215,000 Bitcoin. It's underneath there in terms of, keep scrolling. Now that chart, by the way, shows the kind of distribution of the ETFs.
Okay.
So you can kind of, but keep scrolling down a bit further. Yeah. So here we go. That yellow one was the chart. It kind of shows the daily flows and the total, and this is net. So in other words, when Grayscale sells 5,000 Bitcoin and the other ETFs buy 8,000 Bitcoin, then that's a 3,000 inflow day. So we're tracking the flows, and sometimes they're negative. Sometimes Grayscale sells more than these other ETFs. That did happen last week, but generally you can see the bars are above zero, and you can kind of see that the net flows are up and to the right. So we're at about 215,000 Bitcoin that have flown in. Or another way of looking at it is we had about 10 billion in capital in 2 months coming into these Bitcoin ETFs.
So so if I'm just reading this right, that 3.7K, the last entry that means that 3.7K new Bitcoin were purchased by ETF holders on the 27th of March, correct?
That's correct. Yes.
Okay, cool. I just want to make sure. This is really, man, I'm so excited. I wasn't figuring this out on my own. I kind of started to scroll through this the other day and I was like, man, I'm just going to wait for Thomas to come on here. So I'm not trying to teach
no, that's cool. So what happened on that day was you had so we've got these new ETFs and they purchased about 8,000 Bitcoin. But then you had Grayscale GBTC, that is, sell 4,300. And so that's why we've got it on the chart. It's saying 3,700 Bitcoin actually, because you kind of got to net it out to see. That's what tells you, like, what's this fresh new demand for Bitcoin? And the reason why this is like crazy exciting is that, first of all, you can see on the chart, it's pretty obvious. They're buying about, it varies, but they're buying 5,000 new Bitcoin every day, basically, right? 5,000 Bitcoin a day. Now, the thing is that the miners are mining 900 Bitcoin a day. And now the miners and the natural sellers in the market, they're the ones that they mine these Bitcoin, but they've also got these electricity costs, obviously just enormous. They've got huge variable costs with predominantly electricity, plus obviously all their staff and all that stuff. The miners are the natural sellers in the market, and they only have 900 Bitcoin every day. Well, the ETFs are buying 5,000 Bitcoin. And so there's this demand supply imbalance. it's a very clear demand supply imbalance. And it's the kind of thing where they're just sort of like at the current price at 70K, they're just sort of chewing through like how many people are willing to sell me Bitcoin at 70K, buy. And there's only so many people willing to sell their Bitcoin at 70K. There are people that want to sell it, but there's just only so many that want to sell it at 70K. But these ETFs are relentlessly buying every single day. And eventually what happens is the price moves up. Like you just run out of sellers at a given price. And the ETFs will show up again tomorrow and keep repeating the process. And this is what's driven the price up from when the ETFs launched and we started about 42K. Now it's at 70K. You just got this relentless ETF demand. And when I look at it, I go, the big thing is, what's interesting is that this is coming from about $10 billion worth of capital coming into these ETFs. But the big money, which sounds like a lot, and it is a lot, but at the same time, I worked in kind of traditional finance investments. I kind of know how these things goes, like how like a pension fund or an endowment fund or an insurance fund allocates to a new investment like Bitcoin. And the reality is that they have to have a board meeting. They have to have an investment committee meeting. They have to have papers from their asset consultants. They have to have sign off from their managers. They have to present the papers to the board. The board has to sign off on the investment. This whole process takes time. And they might, by the way, they might only look at kind of the alternative assets in their portfolio. They might look at it twice a year, right? They might have 6 board meetings a year. And it's like, in March, we're going to do our bond portfolio. In June, we're going to do our equity portfolio. And in September, we're going to do our alternative assets bucket. That's kind of the way these big institutional investors operate. Not exactly. Everyone is slightly different. I don't want to make it seem like they're all exactly doing this, but that's the broad framework with which they operate. And they all operate on different timelines. So some of them are looking at alternative assets in March this year, and some of them won't do it until September, November. Like it's all varies. But the point is, the reason why I bring that up is that it's a slow grind to kind of unlock. Like a lot of this investment capital will flow into these Bitcoin ETFs, but it doesn't happen. It's not like on day one. Like for a retail investor, you and I look at this and we go, I'm going in like right now, you know. But
so true.
that's not how it works for them. Like they will have their meeting, they will deliberate on it, and they will invest in it. And it might take between the genesis, you know, they have a meeting in March, they have a board meeting in March, and they say, you know what? I want you to next board meeting present me with an analysis of these board papers for our investment committee meeting, so we can decide whether it makes sense in our alternative assets bucket to invest in Bitcoin. And we can say, hey, look, alternative assets make up, you know, we have a $50 billion fund, alternative assets make up 12% of our fund, of which how much of that should be in Bitcoin? You want to suggest maybe a quarter of that should be in Bitcoin, maybe it's 3% of our 50, you know, then ends up being like, you know, 25% of 12%, but that's all talking about a 50 billion total pie. And then what ends up happening is by the end of it, they end up investing $500 million in Bitcoin. And then you multiply that by each one of these endowments, insurance funds, investors, basically, like all these institutional investors. And there are hundreds of them, like thousands of them in the United States, as well as even more globally. You know, to put it in perspective, like just traditional financial advisors in the States manage like $8 trillion worth of assets. So there's an obscenely large pool of assets out there in the world that are not allocated to Bitcoin. And then not all of them are going to allocate to Bitcoin, but A lot of them will actually. And they're going to allocate a tiny, tiny piece. Like a lot of surveys have suggested that something like 75% of advisors are very interested in allocating to these ETFs, and they'll probably look to allocate somewhere between 2 to 3% of the portfolio to Bitcoin. And so you go, oh, okay, well, 75%, multiply that by 8 trillion, but then you get sort of 2 to 3%. You might be going, okay, that's $250 billion of capital to flow into Bitcoin. And that will take, it's like not like next week, but like over the next couple of years.
Yeah.
But then you go, okay, Bitcoin is this fixed supply asset. Obviously, the miners are not. There's not many Bitcoin for the miners to sell. There will be more. There is Bitcoin that will be unlocked. Basically, as the price goes up, you start to get people that are willing to go, you know what, I bought it at 30 and I'm happy to sell it at 80. Like that's how you kind of unlock the supply necessary for this capital. But there are certain holders that are just going to go, I'm not selling. Like I'm not selling. And that makes it very difficult, because when you've got a situation where maybe there's only like 1 million Bitcoin that's sort of even accessible in terms of that you could basically claw out of the hands of holders, because they're not, they don't really know what they own. They don't they made a little bit of a profit and they're kind of happy about that. And they don't really know what they own. They don't, and suddenly somebody's offering them 3 times what they paid for it. And it's like, yeah, this seems like a good deal. And that's how you kind of get some of that supply. But fundamentally, this is what's going to drive this is what's so kind of exciting. This is why I put all my energy in tracking these like ETFs and this kind of thing, because this is the big story of 2024. Certainly in the financial world. Obviously, there's always bigger things outside of finance going on, but this is the big story of 2024 when it comes to investing.
No, you are spot on. And I want to go through each one of these charts if we can, but I just reported on it yesterday on Coinbase. The amount of Bitcoin on exchange just hit a record 9-year low at 1.9 million, right? And you're saying that these ETFs are buying 5,000 a day.
Yeah.
So in 380 days, theoretically, right? Like if the other ones didn't magically come unlocked and people didn't start moving it back to exchanges because they just 3x'd, in theory, if Grayscale stops selling and they keep buying roughly 380 days, but let's say it's 2 years, right? Let's just say we're way off and the demand cuts down or something happens, right? You're still talking about basically sucking all of the liquidity out of the exchanges. My only question is, I heard that there was the laws that the SEC passed right before these ETFs were launched stated that the ETFs do not have to hold Bitcoin. They just have to hold the cash equivalent. So how many of these Bitcoin ETFs are actually buying Bitcoin and not buying some shitty bonds or securities or government debt? And even though they're on Coinbase, is that counting towards, like, when we see Grayscale has 335,000 Bitcoin on Coinbase, is that part of the Coinbase 1.9 million?
There's a couple of things there. Everybody's really seriously rightfully on edge about, because we've kind of been burned by Sam Bankman-Fried and frankly other exchanges in the very recent history, 2021, right?
Well, and
this
gold.
Kind of fraction.
Like gold is fucked because these people were able to make paper gold and sell you shares of a gold that didn't force them to buy any of the actual assets. So, I mean, if you're selling me paper Bitcoin, which I think is going to be negated, eventually it's going to get to a point where like you're tracking all this and so many people like yourself are able to be like, So where's all that
Yeah.
Bitcoin? But go ahead, keep going.
I don't think that it's not happening right now. This idea that they're kind of fractionally reserving paper bit, like BlackRock, like Larry Fink, these guys, they're not Sam Bankman-Fried. All right, they're not. The thing about it is that they don't need to operate kind of illegally to make their money. They're going to make so much money off this Bitcoin ETF setup that they don't need to kind of cheat the system, and they don't want to. Like part of the reason why these ETFs took so long to come online is because of the actual due diligence involved in making sure that this could be properly and legally done. Now, I know, like, it is. I understand the skepticism, I do, but it's not like a serious concern of mine that they're kind of faking it with paper. And for starters, this is why, by the way, we have seen in the 2 months, Bitcoin price is up 7% or roughly, because they are legitimately buying the Bitcoin. That is happening. Now, we could have a separate conversation about the US government's potential insolvency in the future, in which they basically pull an executive order 6102, which is what they did to gold, 80 years ago, where the government said, actually, all that Bitcoin, that you need to sell that to the government now in order to fund us, basically. And that might be a potential risk in the coming decades. I won't lie to ETF holders. I don't know exactly what risk that is.
That's coming in the next 24. That's coming before Biden leaves office. Like, I mean, if they rig that election, he's taking your fucking Bitcoin, or he's going to do it before that. I mean, that's just my thought, but
Yeah.
I'm going to cut you off there, but
no. Look, that is a potential. The risk. I do see your point about the kind of government seizing the Bitcoin. That might be a risk. Well, it's definitely a risk. I don't know how big a risk it is. I would say it's a relatively small risk. But what I don't think is happening right now is this kind of paper Bitcoin situation, because they do have, like, these institutions do have insights into the custodial holding, like the actual Bitcoin addresses, and it is just Bitcoin is fundamentally much more transparent than gold. Like, with gold, there is no way to track it. Fundamentally, you can't, like, there's just nothing anybody can do about it except pray that the gold is in the vault. But because Bitcoin is literally on the blockchain, it would be nice if it was more transparent, but it's fundamentally there. And there's no, like, the incentives are right now for them to act properly, because don't forget, well, Coinbase holds a majority of, like, they are the sort of the predominant custodian of these ETFs. They're not the only one. Fidelity is its own custodian. There's been a new like Hashdex, which is kind of a new spot Bitcoin ETF that was launched yesterday. So that they're brand new, but they use a different custodian called BitGo. And there are other custodians in the market kind of knocking on the door, trying to really compete with Coinbase to be the custodian. And the fundamental point is that if ARK decides they want to be self-custody, or they want to use these kind of other services to custody their Bitcoin, Coinbase better be able to transfer the Bitcoin to them. Otherwise, we're going to see a situation where we're going to see, like, nobody wants to be in that kind of, like, Sam Bankman-Fried just got sentenced to 25 years in jail, and like the system, it's people have the right incentives, I guess, is what I would say, not to kind of do anything like that.
And this is what you're saying right here is, like, anybody that's watching or listening to this, they can go over to HeyaPollo.com and they can swing over to it says /Bitcoin ETF Tracker, but they can just go to HeyaPollo.com and then come over to this page as well. And it looks like, oh, cool. You got weekly updates as well with Edge.
Yeah.
Edge with Apollo. Subscribe now. Don't miss a weekly update. Let's do that up. I want to get up. I think I actually already did this, so maybe it'll tell me if I already did it. But
yeah, so we do have a weekly newsletter, which we like to provide kind of more like we have a whole bunch of charts that we don't have on this page, just kind of like charting about individual ETF tracking. Plus, we like to kind of add our own analysis in, just do a whole bunch of different things. So that's why we have these kind of newsletters. It's a great way to sort of stay in touch with people.
And this is where it shows you right here, right? Like this shows self-custody. So I know. And now is there anything over here? Like if it says self-custody, will you guys display their wallet if they display it? Is there anywhere on your site that shows the ones that have made their wallets public that we can actually track? And
yeah, no, we're not doing it at the moment, but we could, because certainly Bitwise, for example, have revealed their public address. I do think not many of them have, although they should.
I want to really promote the ones that do, man. Like I really want to drive that home. Like, hey guys, listen, Bitwise is the only one right now, and I've been just talking them up left and right because of that. And I think that if we can get that mindset in enough retail investors that like you got to do what's best for yourself. The low fees make sense, but at the same time, you should be going where the wallet address is public, as long as the reputations are. What's your thoughts on that? I guess.
No, I mean I completely agree with you, and I would sort of go a step further and say I think it's working so well for Bitwise, because this is now they're in a kind of top Bitcoin ETF is BlackRock and Fidelity, and then you've also got ARK. Bitwise is right there underneath there, kind of the number 4. And the thing about it is that BlackRock, Fidelity, these are like big institutions managing trillions and trillions of dollars. Nobody had ever heard of Bitwise. Like nobody had heard of them. And then now they're like compete. I mean, they've got 30% as much as Fidelity. It's not heaps, but at the same time, they're kind of crushing their competition in terms of like. They're doing way better than Van Eck and Valkyrie and Franklin Templeton. Franklin Templeton manages 10 trillion in assets, and they've got nothing compared to Bitwise. So it kind of shows you that Bitwise's marketing is really effective. And one of the things that they've done to kind of differentiate themselves is actually make their coins public, like publicly available, publicly transparent on the blockchain.
And you have a chart that shows those. Where was that one at? Where's the one that shows? Do you have a graph like oh, right here, right? Oh no, I thought you had one that kind of. Oh yeah, here it is.
Yeah, so you can kind of like this is showing it over time. You can kind of, if you just scroll down a little bit, if you want, you can. On that chart, you can kind of. It's this one. It's actually. Yeah. So you can actually kind of pull that to the end, and you get to see how many Bitcoin like what they hold.
Yep.
Over time and in a given moment, you can kind of see, what they're sort of how they've had the performance.
At one point, Bitwise had jumped up there. It looked like.
Yeah, it had a really hot. It did have a kind of a hot start. Just out of the gate. Yeah. And then BlackRock really kicked into gear. But nonetheless, they've still like. I think they would be thrilled to be in the position they are in, especially from coming like a pretty unknown ETF provider.
Wow.
But yeah, I mean, look, the thing is just that what's happening here is it's a fundamental transformation about like Bitcoin is being embedded into the traditional financial system here. And all of this capital, which has previously had kind of potentially interested in Bitcoin, but no way of comfortably and easily accessing it. And the reason why is because if you're a traditional investor, you're not going to just create an account on an exchange and some website somewhere and put your money in it. And on the other hand, if you can imagine, right, you can't, it's just so difficult to have like this whole, I'm just going to manage my private keys. It doesn't really scale to kind of institutions where if you've got a board of 12 people and they want to invest $1 billion, it's like, how do we manage the private keys for that? It's not technically impossible. Like, it can be done. It's just very difficult. It's just like a seriously challenging problem. And it's enough friction, which is why they just haven't been doing it. It's just a complicated, it's like, it's just put in the too difficult basket. But now these ETFs kind of just go, provide me the service, make that so simple and easy that I don't have to think about it. I'm comfortable investing in ETFs. We already do that. Now it's just a different it's another ETF for a different commodity, this time Bitcoin. And to your point, I think you raised it earlier about the kind of US government financial situation. It's really obvious to everybody, even if you're not in Bitcoin, right? There's basically nobody out there that's paying any attention at all that doesn't see, holy shit, they've got technically $34 trillion in debt, but realistically, when you look at the total liabilities, including like Social Security and all this, all these kind of unfunded liabilities, US government owes like $175 trillion to a lot of different people. And there's no realistic way that the government can pay what it owes. So the only kind of logical conclusion that anybody's coming to is they're gonna, thank you, yes, exactly.
It was 170 trillion probably like 6 months ago. It's like 200.
It's you can't. Nobody can even keep up with these numbers, right? It's
Never.
And I guess the fundamental point is, I believe that this is driving so much of, like, this is driving everything. This is why I think there's so much, not to get like too off topic, but I know that like in America, this kind of immigration is like a big deal at the moment. And I believe that this is the fundamental reason why they're kind of letting in a ton of immigration, because it's the only way out of, like, you have a problem where you've got population on the numerator, and on the denominator you've got all this debt. And I think on some level they're going, this is undoable. We have to grow the population massively in order to even make this a tenable situation. I think that I suspect that might be why there's this kind of massively growing sort of increase in immigration happening in America at the moment. That's just a theory, but that's the only thing I can think of is to explain why it would be happening.
Oh, because they know when this hits the fan, we're coming for the bankers and politicians. They know that we're not stupid enough to fight each other and go into another civil war and fight against each other. So you either bring a common enemy in here to distract people from right there. It's like you look at Travis Kelce, you look at the Super Bowl, you look at even what's going on with Hunter Biden, you look at, just name any of the things, right? Distraction. None of that fucking matters. None. Because our children have zero future with this. And we are on the precipice of like every single person. 4 years ago, you've known this, right? Like 4 years ago, you try to have like this type of conversation that our government prints money out of thin air with like a normal person that's not into this. It's like deer in the headlights. Like they have like, oh yeah, you're the fucking crazy conspiracy guy. You probably think the earth's flat too, And like, no, dude, our dollar's backed by nothing. Like I was driving home from the airport with my dad in 2020, and he goes, something about Bitcoin. It's like, it's not backed by anything. And I go, what is the dollar backed by? The dollar's backed by gold. Yeah. And I go, Dad, the dollar hasn't been backed by gold since 1970. He's like, what are you talking about? No one would use the dollar if it wasn't backed by gold. He was like dead set, like, you're a fucking idiot. The dollar's backed by gold, moron, or no one would fucking use it. And I go, so you're telling me right now, if the dollar's not backed by gold, you'll sell everything in your fucking bank account, put it all into Bitcoin? No, well. And I followed him like 2 seconds right there. Bitcoin. And then he was just like dumbfounded. He's like, these people don't know. Yeah. I don't know. It's just like,
no, I completely agree with you. It's, and in fact, it kind of reminds me, Henry Ford famously said, like, if the people understood how the actual banking system worked, there would be a revolution tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
And that was, he said that 100 years ago, but it's still true today, right? Because as you said, the average person has no idea. And that's why there's so much, and also to be fair, there's just a hell of a lot of lying, like straight, pure, unfiltered, unabashed lying that happens. This is what, when we have a situation where, and during the COVID crisis, when they literally printed trillions of dollars, right?
Yeah.
And of course, the consequence of that is inflation. And, if you understand anything about economics, it's very intuitive, like it's just like straight common sense. It's just, they just printed the money and we got inflation. Like that's the thing that you expected to, the thing that you expected to happen, the thing that you knew without a shadow of a doubt would happen, happened. But then you had the politicians go on TV and say, oh no, your groceries are going up in price because actually the corporations are greedy. And it's like as though they weren't greedy in 2019, but now they are greedy. Like it doesn't, it's just absurd on its face. But this is what they do. And the problem is that most of the public is not educated enough to tell the difference between when a politician is lying to them or not. So you can't actually, you just can't tell, unfortunately. And I mean, and I do think that information is becoming it's being like dispersed by the internet and also just awareness from Bitcoin. I mean, I do think if you think about it, when I was at like 20 years ago, when I was a kid, this concept of fiat money, nobody used that term.
Never.
In 2003, fiat money, what is that? Nobody had any concept. We lived in a fiat money system, like we all did.
Yep.
But nobody had any concept of it. There was no even idea about what fiat money was. I mean, maybe like a few individual some gold bugs out there and stuff, they got it, but truthfully 99.99999% of the public had no idea. Nowadays that is a term that is in the public lexicon. It doesn't matter who you're talking to. If you say the word fiat money to somebody, there's an extremely high chance that they know exactly what you're referring to, which is an incredible development in terms of public education that's happened over the course of a decade. And we're not there yet. But even then, your dad is a good example. Now, he didn't know 5 years ago about the dollar system. He might not be a Bitcoiner today. Maybe he is. I don't know. But
he owns a little bit, just 1,000 here, 1,000 there, nothing.
But at least he does understand. He has a much better understanding about what the US dollar is today than he did 5 years ago.
Yep.
And that is a developing process that we're seeing constantly. Everybody's aware of it. I mean, it's so fundamentally obvious when you look at, I mean, housing makes it as well also really obvious. It depending, like particularly where I'm from in Australia, that the housing, like the houses in the neighborhood that I grew up in have 10x'd in price over the last 20 years. Yeah, and of course it's the same houses. It's the same house. It's now worth 10 times more. But of course, the reality is that a house is just a house. It's just a house. Like there's the idea that like, oh, people just really want to live in a house today, but they didn't really want to back then. No, of course, everybody wanted to live in a house back then. Like, there's no, that's absurd on its face. The reality is that the house is just a house, but the dollar has lost its value. That's what's happening here. And I think that awareness is growing. And what's really interesting is that it comes in waves. Like, because what happens is the education of one person fundamentally spreads. It spreads like a virus to other people. So that's why it comes in waves where you have a whole bunch of people that like suddenly become online, like light bulb flash moment for them. And it happens all at once for a lot of different people. And then that's why you get these kind of hype cycles in Bitcoin, because it's a wave of awareness. Just like how the COVID moment, sort of 2020, was a really big kind of like, oh shit, the government can just like lock you down and print money. Like that was a big wave awareness, and it didn't like unlock the whole pop. It didn't like unlock 100% of people, but it did. Suddenly, you just had an enormous growth in understanding about
tyranny,
what the government can do, and then why Bitcoin is important.
Yeah.
I think we're getting a wave right now, again, driven by two things. One is obviously this sort of fundamental problem with the US government debt, which is not going away. But then also a wave of it becoming acceptable to do something about it. When Larry Fink is on TV and he says, Bitcoin will be here forever, I'm kind of concerned about these currencies. It just has a whole different level of it has a whole different level of power over people, of persuasion, than someone like you or me saying it.
Yep.
And what it does is it unlocks a whole lot of capital of people that go, oh, I kind of was thinking that before, but I didn't know that was an acceptable thing to think. Like my gut was telling me that, but I was also like, I'm not sure I'm really allowed to think that. And now these people go, oh, you know what? It's safe. I'm just going to put the money in Bitcoin. And that's happening in waves right now. And we're going through these waves. And I think there's going to be more of that going forward. So this is partly what also causes these kind of bear markets as well in Bitcoin, because you have a big wave of understanding, then it kind of dissipates, and it maybe doesn't happen again for another couple of years, and it kind of needs to like repeat. It's kind of like a fractal. It just needs to happen over and over and over again until everybody understands.
So I couldn't agree with you. I couldn't agree with you more. So can we start at the top here and have you walk us through and break down? So this is obviously the tracker, right? We kind of went through this already. What are we looking at as far as this one right here?
Yeah, sure. So this is looking at the sort of Bitcoin holdings of every single ETF, all the spot. There are 10, the 9 new ETFs, and then Grayscale as well. And you can the color represents what the ETF is holding. So you can see two things here. You can see on January 10, we started with 619,000 Bitcoin, and it was all in Grayscale, it's GBTC. That's why it's all blue. Whereas you fast forward a few months and you can see the blue bar has shrunk by half, but the other bars are catching up. That sort of light green bar, that's BlackRock. The kind of light pink one is Fidelity. And you can see they're growing. You can basically see they're growing holdings every day, but then also in proportion relative to each other. So that's what that's kind of tracking. So what's happening clearly, BlackRock is kind of, it's eating Grayscale, and it's really going to take it's sort of growing in its relative proportion of the overall chart. But fundamentally, what's most important is the holdings are going up and to the right, and that's as long as that's happening, that's bullish for Bitcoin.
Wow, this is such a fantastic site. How many people are working on this? Is this something that you basically? I know you keep saying our team, so I assume there's more than just you. This is such a fantastic site.
Yeah, there's three of us that three co-founders of Apollo. So Sahil and Julian, who's the CEO of Apollo. The three of us have been working on this for since 2022. And what we have, if you want to, maybe you can check out some of the other aspects of the website. We have over 150 Bitcoin related products and services with lots of different reviews of these services.
What are the sites?
So if you go click on Apollo, you'll go back to the homepage. And then you can kind of browse by category, for example, or you can search for a product. Just if you I don't know, Swan Bitcoin or something, something you kind of So
Which
what?
one?
Yeah,
Yep.
maybe the top one. Yeah.
Oh shit! Sorry.
But just click browse category, whatever.
Oh, I got it.
So you can see, for example, we've got, so we have all this product information of them. We also have reviews. So we have people come to the website and write reviews of their experience on Apollo. With the different service. So in this case, it's on Swan. And yeah, what you're highlighting there, that earn 200 sats, we have a kind of a really nice incentive model to be able to, like, we have something like 5,000 plus reviews on Apollo of these different products and services. And we kind of have an incentive model to get people to write a review, because actually, when people write about their authentic experience using a service, they actually earn Bitcoin using Apollo. The rewards can vary. If you just come to our website, you earn 200 Satoshis, which is a tiny unit of Bitcoin.
Mm-hmm.
There are 100 million Satoshis in one Bitcoin. So you're earning, and what we do is we partner with companies, and they invite their users to write reviews on Apollo. And it's just a great way of kind of, look, if you're a company and you're saying write a review of our service, people may or may not do it. But when you say we'll reward you, like in return you get 1,000 Satoshis for your time, it just unlocks the willingness to spend time writing reviews, basically.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of the added extra twist to enable these kind of review collection. And then what we do is we pay out our users via the Lightning Network, which is kind of a layer 2 of Bitcoin. And it's cool because we can make these kind of global instant payments to anywhere in the world with basically 0 fees. So it kind of enables these kind of micro payments. Like 200 Satoshis is, if you measured in dollars, it's not a lot, but nonetheless, it's kind of interesting. There's Bitcoin as a kind of magical element to it, where people love stacking sats. Like people love, oh, I can earn some Bitcoin doing this, I'll do it. Even though, like, you're not gonna get rich off it. Yeah, but it's still fun. And I think that's what
I was literally over here cracking my head. Like, I wonder how many of these companies I've used, and I'm like, I'll take 200 sats. Like, it might not be much, but sats are sats, man. I think they're going to be valuable assets in the future. 200 sats might be like, I remember sending like 30 something Ethereum to the wrong address back when it was like $2. And like back then it was like, oh, I lost $30. Now I'm like, oh shit, dude, I lost like like almost 100 G's.
Yeah, for sure. We've paid out. I'm not sure. We definitely, like, well over like 1 million Satoshis. I can't remember. I'd have to go into accounting or whatever. But we're paying out sats every day. And it's great because it's like, it's just a value, kind of, it's a win-win-win situation where users, like, the sort of the reviewers, well, they get the sats. So, all right, great for them. We, like, the readers now kind of have, like, we got some reviews. We can kind of find a way to actually compare products and services, because it's actually kind of difficult when somebody tells you, like, where should I go buy Bitcoin? It's like, where do we even begin to be able to differentiate between services? It's actually just really helpful if you can read, like, hey, let me just read 20 reviews of people of this service. So it's just really helpful to have these kind of reviews. And then for us, we're paying out it's a value for value exchange. Obviously, we're paying out Bitcoin, but we're trying to build up a startup, which we're trying to attract lots of users to our website. Like, this is, and it's you can think about it like it's advertising, in the sense of, we're not paying money to Google or Facebook. So we're paying money directly to our users. So it's kind of a win for, like, we had to, you have to pay to attract people to your website somehow. So I would rather be paying people to write reviews of services than be paying Google to put up an ad to show, say, click me. So it's kind of, yeah.
That was the first thing I noticed about your
win-win.
website. There was no ads on it. I was like, dude, this is so rare. I didn't see any ads on your. Maybe am I blocking them? Do you guys have ads on your site, or is it? I didn't see like the click funnel things on the side, and some websites are so.
Yeah.
Well, for a creator like myself, like some of these, like post millennial. So I do my show on LFA TV, right? Like, I want to report on your news article, right? Which means I want to screenshot it, right, and put it into my program, kind of like I just did right here. When I go to your website and like, like say, like we can just go back to, the ETF tracker, right? Like, I want to be able to come over here to your website and just take a clean shot. I want your logo in it, right? And I want to be that, right? On their site, like the logo can't even be in there because there's like a whole banner thing of ads across the top. Then there's a whole, you know what I'm saying? It's like, I can't even get the headline of their article. And like, I came over here and I brought it up a few times on my show, and it's just so clean and so nice. And I just really like what you guys have going on over here, man. Really, really do.
Well, thank you. I mean, we don't have ads, but the one thing about it is that the whole site is based on presenting services to people. So when you're looking for, when you like, say you go to the buy Bitcoin page, for example, they're not, you're going to find services of all these different exchanges.
Yeah.
Well, it's not an ad, but on the other hand, you can click, if you read an exchange and you're like, oh, I'm happy with the reviews, you can click on a link. And so that it's not an ad. It's actually a service of providing like
value.
Yeah, it's just it's just a more sophisticated way of presenting products to people, basically, because it's still the same in this. An ad is fundamentally presenting a link to a product to somebody. They click that, whereas it's, instead of presenting it at random, it's actually saying like, we're going to help you find the thing that you want, and then you're going to click on it, and then that ultimately benefits Apollo. But that's how
Have you guys talked to like, like if I'm Binance and I'm like, oh, wow, there's a lot of people going this, I kind of want Binance to be like the top, the top reviewed exchange over here as far as like the amount of reviews. Have you ever got like any of these exchanges like, hey, you guys might want to run ask their customers on Binance, like maybe they get a little bit of B&B if they come over to HeyaPollo and leave you guys a review. Have you done any or thought about any partnerships like that?
Yeah, we have, and we have been doing that. So, for example, if you looked at Relay app, a lot of their so they were able to get 137 reviews on Apollo, which is quite a lot. And the way they're able to do that, sort of really drive up a large volume of reviews, is they actually invited their users to Apollo. And then all of their reviews are marked as verified reviews because these are just customers invited by Relay to Apollo to write reviews. So that's like, we have actually partnered with lots of these exchanges, not all of them, but lots of them, not just exchanges, lots of these service providers, which is better for multiple reasons. It's better for the exchange because they can increase their kind of exposure on Apollo, they get more reviews. But it's also better because the best source of these reviews is, like, nobody knows better about who their customers are than they do, right? So if we want to get reviews from Relay app, it's actually the best way of doing that is asking Relay to ask their customers for reviews. It's kind of the cleanest way to get that that sort of find the customers. So it does make sense for us to partner with companies. We are doing that. It's one of the, so it's we kind of have multiple channels for people coming to the website. One of them is this kind of invited review process where X exchange out there is inviting, not just exchanges, we have all kinds of services on the platform, but that's what kind of what our focus is. It's fundamentally it's a product discovery platform website. The ETF tracking is kind of a we do that as well. We do that because it's fantastic brand exposure for Apollo, and it's just extremely interesting to follow. So it's just like kind of important for the ecosystem to be following that, and it's just great kind of attraction to the broader Apollo ecosystem that's happening on our website.
Would is this something that like I can because I'm going to be using this a lot whenever I don't have a guest for an interview, I do an actual news show. So now that I fully understand how your website works, I'm probably going to go over these ETFs every day. Can I tell people that they can come over here and get free sats by leaving reviews on your guys' site?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, cool. All right.
Yeah,
this is a second. There's the Bitcoin Orange Pill app. You know, if they sign up and they use my referral link, they get 10,000 sats. And then I get 10,000 sats. And then if they bring somebody on, as long as they're using a referral link, they're getting those 10,000 sats. And it's really cool. So I'm kind of like, this is now the second place where I can just keep, you know, if they don't own any Bitcoin, it's really cool to get your free first little piece of Bitcoin for free. And I think once you get that skin in the game, you know, once you have a little bit of it and you watch it go up, you're like, wow. And then if I can convince you to think in percentage wise versus like, oh, I only have $1,000 worth of Bitcoin, it went up 10%. Wow, I made $100. No. You just increased your net wealth because everything else you have is valueless, right? I mean, maybe if you have a little gold or some property, whatever, but like if you got dollars in a bank or anything but Bitcoin, really, you're long that, you're short Bitcoin, you know? So it's like,
right.
So let's go to the next part of this. Did we cover all the charts yet that were over there on the chart page on the ETF?
Yeah, look, I think we have. I mean, people can go have a look as well, but I think we have.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure because I want to go over this and. Oh, can I ask you one more question on it? Because I want to make sure when I'm using this in my shows that I fully am grasping everything. Sure. The Bitcoin holdings, miners. What is this one right here?
Yeah, so it's just another way. I just trying to provide a bit of comparison for like the broader financial institutions. So we have some of the ETFs there, but we also have MicroStrategy, like Tether, the company. They actually hold 66,000 Bitcoin. So no yeah, they've kind of acquired, and they're steadily acquiring every quarter. They take, as part of their kind of company policy, they take 15% of their profits and use it to buy Bitcoin. So that's growing over time. And we also kind of just tracking these publicly traded miners. There's actually a lot of traded miners out there, guys like Marathon, Riot, I mean, you know, CleanSpark, all these guys, they hold Bitcoin on their balance sheet. And obviously, like, this is kind of volatile. We kind of try and track how many Bitcoin they hold on they're holding at any one point in time. And it's just based on their like kind of annual reports and financial reports. So, you know, if they sell 1,000 Bitcoin tomorrow, we're not going to like immediately update the website because we're not going to know. Yeah. But over time, we kind of get an idea about roughly how much of these miners holding. And then also just like for some perspective, you know, Tesla, they hold 10,000 Bitcoin. So we've got that there as well. So we're kind of tracking that. Yeah, was it like 70,000? Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just curious on what that is. Oh, wow. Wow. I didn't know. Oh, yeah, that's right. Because they sold a percentage of them, right? They put $1 billion originally at 30K or something.
Yeah, so they sold about 75% of their Bitcoin. They actually had something like closer to like 40,000 Bitcoin at one stage, but they sold it in 2022.
Ouch.
So, but they hold 10,000 still. So.
Wow. So that's cool. So are you guys going to keep expanding this? Like is there like a threshold? Like, is it 10K, I guess would be the bare minimum, and you're going to keep adding more companies that as they add Bitcoin to their balance sheet?
If we see definitely, I mean, if we see new companies come in and significant holdings, I think we're constantly iterating, updating the website. We have a kind of a MicroStrategy tracking section. If you scroll down, might as well show you a link to it now.
Yeah.
Maybe just scroll a little bit more. So you scroll up, where it just says that MicroStrategy Bitcoin Treasury on your right.
Yep.
Yeah, that's a link. If you click on that card, we're kind of tracking some interesting data on MicroStrategy, looking at their performance over time,
Shit.
and then also kind of underneath that, we've got basically like the premium. Well, so here we've got their kind of Bitcoin per share or sats per share. That kind of gives you an idea about what you're actually buying when you buy a share of MicroStrategy. We also just got those kind of Bitcoin purchases there, which kind of give you an indication about like the frequency with which they've been making the company itself, company treasury has been making Bitcoin purchases. So yeah, so kind of tracking the Satoshis per share of MicroStrategy. And then underneath this chart, we've got, this is kind of an interesting chart, although it possibly looks a bit broken there with the share price. I might need to fix that. But when you look at the NAV premium, what you can see there is you can see how much the share price is trading at relative to the total Bitcoin holdings. And that is kind of tells you a story about, like, right now it's closer to 2, which means that the market cap of MicroStrategy is at, so market cap of MicroStrategy is about 32 billion, and the market capitalization of their Bitcoin treasury is at 15 billion. So it kind of gives you an idea that it's trading at like a 2x premium on their net asset values. And that's kind of interesting to track over time, because you can see it wasn't that long ago that MicroStrategy was trading at 1 times their NAV. So with a market,
Yeah, I see.
Basic. So
Can you break that down, like that the whole MicroStrategy Bitcoin thing? Can you really explain that to me in layman terms? Like, when you're saying premium, what does that mean? And I apologize. I know I want to be respectful of your time, and we're well over that hour mark that I had booked you for. Are you on a time restraint?
Well, actually, I do have another call, but happy to just let's talk through MicroStrategy
Okay.
so quickly. But then maybe we can come back and have another call sometime, because I've
Dude, anytime,
really
man.
enjoyed
Absolutely, bro.
really enjoyed the chat with you. But I'm going to time constraint. But just on the MicroStrategy thing, so the way it works is that they hold Bitcoin on their balance sheet. They also have, anybody can buy shares of the company, right? So at any given point in time, the company is trading on the market. The Bitcoin is not trading. The Bitcoin is held by the company. And so the shares are volatile in price. The Bitcoin is also volatile in price, but not necessarily. You might think they would move 1-to-1, but they don't necessarily. So for example, in the last sort of call it 6 weeks, Bitcoin has gone up about 70%, but MicroStrategy has gone up like 150%. So MicroStrategy has gone up a lot. The price of acquiring MicroStrategy has gone up a lot more than the price of acquiring Bitcoin. And another way of saying that is, if you were to be using MicroStrategy as a kind of proxy for holding Bitcoin, it's a more expensive, you're paying a higher price for that Bitcoin, basically. Because previously, kind of like, $70,000 of MicroStrategy shares might have equaled $70,000 of Bitcoin exposure. And now that $70,000 of MicroStrategy shares only gets you $35,000 of Bitcoin exposure.
Yeah.
So that's the kind of premium that's being charged on the MicroStrategy price. Now, this isn't to say that it should be exactly 1-for-1. And the reason why is because what you have when you have MicroStrategy is it's being run by Michael Saylor, who's brilliant, and he is able to arbitrage the financial markets in order to get great deals for his business. For example, borrowing $1 billion to buy Bitcoin at a really low interest rate, with like some kind of convertible option 5 years later into equity at a 50% premium. And this sort of thing, which is like, it's a great deal for MicroStrategy shareholders, and it's simply not something that like you and I could do. Like I would love for somebody to lend me $1 billion at a 0% interest rate so I could buy Bitcoin. Nobody's gonna do that for me, but they will actually do that for MicroStrategy. And that's why you have this kind of weird situation where on the one hand, you're buying the Bitcoin holdings of MicroStrategy, but you're also buying the ability to get more Bitcoin holdings in the future. And how do you value that element? And that's what the market is doing. And that's why you get this fluctuating premium. And yeah, that's what we see.
That was a great explanation, man. Thank you so much, Thomas. Really greatly appreciate you coming on the show. You have my Calendly now. I mean, even if you want to come on once a week, once a month, don't have to ask again. Is if you see an open spot and there's stuff going on with the ETFs, or there's a new development or a new ETF launches, or you guys got new data and you update it on your website and you want to come over here and share it with my audience, just don't even ask. Just book a site, shoot me a DM and say, hey, coming on. We're going to talk about this. I'll be like, all right, cool. Let's do it.
Sweet. Yeah, no, I'd love that. I appreciate that. It's been really enjoyed the chat, Ryan. Yeah, it's great to connect with you too.
God bless you, man. Thank you. Keep up the great work, man. And I can't wait to see where this website evolves to and what you guys got going on in the future, man. Thank you.
Thank you so much. All right. I'll catch you later.
Sounds good, brother. God bless. All right, folks. Again, if you guys are not following Thomas over at at Apollo over on X. Yeah, it's actually at Apollo Stats over on X. I can't even talk right now. And if you swing over there and follow Thomas as well, he goes by Thomas_FAHRER, and all of his links are down there in the description. These are the people that I was hoping that I was going to be able to bring onto the show and that have this vast knowledge and understanding of the Bitcoin ecosystem, because you guys didn't hear it, but me and Thomas were talking before the show, and you're seeing Bitcoin reminding me of almost like Ethereum 2017, or maybe even Ethereum 2020, right? Like there was Hello Kitties and a few products that were kind of like in this weird realm of DeFi, but we didn't really understand it. And we're like, who the hell is going to play this game of kitties on a fucking blockchain? Like, this is retarded. What fucking dweeb in his mom's basement's jerking off to fucking kitty porn and making these little kitties? And the next thing you know, these kitties are selling for like 100 G's. And you're like, man, I wish I was that dork jerking off in my mom's basement fucking watching kitty porn, because they're fucking rich. And I think, we're going down that rabbit hole on Cadena, which I still think is a phenomenal project. And I think it's going to do amazing things. And I think it's a technology and a company no different than MicroStrategy. And it has the ability to really revolutionize this space. So completely different asset. But what we're watching in this Bitcoin ecosystem, and just realizing like what happened on Ethereum, me and Thomas were kind of having the same conversation before, is like, I mean, you go into Cadena right now, and if something launches on it, great. Like it's even hard to drive when every single person is bullish on a project in the Cadena ecosystem. We raised a couple $1 million in volume, and it's a legit gaming project built by Amir, and he's a legit dev, and it's not a rug pull. And like a little hiccup ran in there with the code that he put out, and he ended up just going and spot buying 6,000 KDA and made it whole. Like definitely not a rug pull, but like we couldn't even drive a little bit of liquidity in there, because there is no liquidity on the Cadena ecosystem, and we all got KDA and nothing to do with it. So like until that ecosystem develops, until there's thousands of projects, it's still going to be kind of early, where like there's a lot of shit going on Bitcoin, like so much that I can't even keep up with it. I don't know if anybody really can. From ordinals, they got NFTs going on Bitcoin where they're like inscribing NFTs into Satoshis, which is still way above my head. They have this whole world going on with all these different cold storage wallets, these multi-sig options. There's so many companies that are coming out of it. We now have Bitcoin DeFi that's getting ready to kick off, where we're actually going to have L2s that are built on top of Bitcoin. They're building their own L2 DEXs. So, imagine Uniswap all over again. I mean, you nail it with one of these Bitcoin DEXs that does it. And then these are the projects that I really want to get on. Specifically these products that are building on top of Bitcoin. Not that I necessarily want to buy any of them, but I'm a degenerate. I'm always a degenerate at heart. I don't think that's ever going to change. So I probably will be aping into some of these. But I think the gains are going to be so insane. I think it just represents so much more than any other crypto project. You know, I didn't understand it in 2020. Didn't understand it in 2017, 15, or 16. I still don't even know if I can really wrap my head around what Bitcoin means for the world. I can't really wrap my head around BlackRock. I think Thomas Gannon gave me, you know, the best reassurance, where Sam Bankman-Fried was a dweeb having orgies with, like, you know, polycule orgies with like everybody on his staff. Like, not the sharpest tool in the shed, but I think he was being protected by the CIA. So he had fucking cojones the size of grapefruits, you know, where BlackRock is also. BlackRock's like, he's that man on X-Files that like smokes a cigar and like laughs when you think about like somebody's actually the president. And he's like, haha, no, we run this country, fucker. Like, we want you, Epstein. We're going to Epstein you. And I think BlackRock's on that level where it's like scary the amount of power that man has, and he's pure fucking evil. And I think that he's going to be in prison for the rest of his life at some point. Might not be this year. Might not be a year and a half from now. But I think in the next, or fleeing this country, or fleeing this world that we call this earth, I guess you should say. But yeah, I don't know where I'm going with that. But I just think the Bitcoin ecosystem is going to revolutionize the world. It already is. Whether I believe it or not, whether you believe it. And me and Thomas were also talking earlier about the, like when we were talking about shitcoining, right? And it's like, you know, these other bull runs, like we're in the bear market, right? And we're kind of hunting for, like, yeah, we want 100x, right? And that's in the back of our head. But we're really kind of like, I mean, you look at a product that has $1 billion market cap right now, and unless they turn out to be like a booming ecosystem like Solana, your best case is a 5 or 10x. And that's really pushing it. Like, Bitcoin at this point at 70K, based off the demand that doesn't seem like it's going to go anywhere, you have a guaranteed 10x on Bitcoin. So if you have a decent amount of wealth, like, you have the opportunity of a lifetime here. Like we were talking about it earlier, I think D's Nuts was saying it over here in the live chat. Only 200,000 people in the world own a Bitcoin. Own one Bitcoin, only 200,000. So you think about that. How many celebrities do you think you know? How many celebrities are in the United States right now? I'm just trying to Google it. I'm just trying to get just an educated guess on how many celebrities are in the United States. How about we just go, how many millionaires are in the United States? So here's 33 incredible millionaire statistics. 8.8% of you adults. So 33 incredible millionaire statistics. Let's read off some of these, right? There are 22 million millionaires in the United States. So does anybody know one millionaire that doesn't plan to stay a millionaire? Especially if you're self-made and you didn't inherit daddy's wealth. Like, if you're a legit self-made millionaire, you are going to do everything, because you know how bad the rat race sucks. And you know you go fucking back there, right? So only 200,000 people in the world own a Bitcoin. And there are 22 million millionaires in the United States. They're going to pay you $1 million for your Bitcoin, period. It's not even fathomable that they wouldn't. There's just not enough of them to do that. Right? There's just not enough Bitcoin for them to buy. And then you add in what BlackRock's sucking out of the market. And this isn't a what if. This isn't it like we're hoping on these ETFs get approved. Dude, they're getting approved. And you can legit see every single day the manipulation in this market, where they are shaking you out. They are sucking every last sat that you're willing to sell out of your pocket, because they know that you have no choice but to buy them fucking back from BlackRock. Now, this might get more nefarious than we know, right? BlackRock might be trying to acquire all these Bitcoins so that they can somehow force us to use, with like laws and fucking tyranny and bullshit, to use their, wallets or some shit where they kind of get enough Bitcoin and they can kind of force people to use it in a certain way. But like, that's why you got to fucking buy it now. You got to get that shit into a cold storage wallet. So if we go into a revolution or anything that happens in this country, 8.8% of US adults are millionaires. 33% of US millionaires are women. 76% of millionaires in the United States are white. And white people account for 60% of the total US population. There are 62.25 millionaires globally, an 11.4% increase from 2020. An 11.4% increase. So 65.2 millionaires around the globe who don't plan on going broke. They don't ever plan on not being a millionaire. Real estate doesn't have the gains Bitcoin does. Nothing does. This is fucking nuts, man. So it's like, yeah, I want to talk about other shit, but what else can I literally talk to you guys about that I'm like, yep, guarantee 10x. Not investing advice. Everything stated in this show is just my opinion. Jerk off with fucking cat piss and sandpaper. Fuck off. Nothing's true. It's all a lie. Conspiracy theories. YouTube, you got it? All right, cool. So an estimate of 21.5% of people, like Zippa has to just cram down the racist shit down your throat. Who the fuck cares what race you are? The average millionaire is 57 years old. So let that sink in. Not that 57 is that old now, but you're kind of getting to that point where like, I guess I'd say 65 now. They still kind of have that younger vibe, I guess, going on. But like you got an opportunity if you're a Gen Z to go out there and work a job at McDonald's and put $40,000 a year, half a Bitcoin in 1 year. Maybe you get become the luckiest man on earth and somehow they can manipulate this price and keep it down. Whether that's a false flag attack, another, magical boat runs into a bridge, kind of like the movie Leave the World Behind. It's weird. 88% of surveyed millionaires graduated from college. So there's your golden goose right there, folks. 88% of the retards in this country are indoctrinated sheep. 88% of them. 88% of the millionaires around the world graduated from college. The woke mind virus, man, might be your guys' golden ticket out of the rat race. 62% graduated from public schools. Just 15% of surveyed millionaires hold a senior leadership role. The 5 careers most commonly held by millionaires, according to one survey, included engineering, accounting, and law. Billionaires are the the 5 top careers for billionaires, and multimillionaires are politician, congressman, senator, and president. Local statistics of millionaires. Wow, man, this is fucking nuts, guys. Home skill, says we had to pass calculus to graduate. Not anymore. Isn't that crazy? Like my son goes, I don't have homework, Dad. We don't have homework in school. One last, Diddy just left, said, yeah, Evan, imagine how many Bitcoin just disappeared with Diddy. Cheese and rice, 15-minute cities full of crime. Coming to a city near you. Oh, wait, it's already happening. It is. Sure is. I'm trying to prop up my bag. Almost. Maybe quit. Almost maybe me quit today. Yeah. I mean, think about that. You got a whole Bitcoin. You're pretty much set for retirement. That's it, guys. Like if you have one Bitcoin in your portfolio today, you're good. You get to coast. Drain your 401ks now. Put them into Bitcoin. Pay the 25% fee. You're literally letting some other woke mind virus frat student gamble with your entire life savings because you don't want to take custody and pay a 10% or a 25% fee one time to put your wealth into an asset that's literally going to appreciate at the very least by 700% over the next 2 or 3 years, 4 years tops. And that's at the very least. When this thing starts to engulf, because it's going to be that game theory, right? Like the US just did this Bitcoin thing And now every freaking corporation in America, and we're going to start attracting capital from all over the world, right? They can already, anybody that can invest in USA markets is going to start moving their capital over here. You're going to watch the capital get sucked out of these other countries, right into Bitcoin ETFs. It's done. It's over. Man, what exciting time to be alive. Now, if we can just save our country in the process, folks, oh my gosh. You imagine how America is going to look with free energy on a Bitcoin standard, with the woke mind virus completely killed off once and for all? We'll be the greatest nation in the world again. We're not right now, but we will be. And there's only one way we get there. There's only one way we make America great again. And that's by adopting the Bitcoin standard. We'll end it on that, folks. We are going on an hour and a half. That was an amazing interview. I'll just talk all night if I don't shut up right now. So God bless each and every one of you guys. Get out there, lift some weights, eat some meat, stack some sats, pray to God. And that's it, folks. God bless you. God bless Donald Trump, and God bless America. I'm out. We'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace.